Guilt of the Heart, Episode 1, The Trial. London's rain has a way of washing the city clean, yet somehow it never reaches the people. Beneath the gray skies, the court loomed like a cathedral of judgment, and I, Amelia Hart, stood before it, heels clicking against the marble steps. The Crown versus Ethan Ward, a young man accused of murdering his employer, a wealthy art dealer found dead in his own gallery. The case was sensational, soaked in scandal and whispers of betrayal. The evidence to the world was overwhelming. A broken security camera, Ethan's fingerprints on the murder weapon, and his clothes stained with blood. But that morning, as I stared into the fog that crept over the Thames, something inside me felt off. Not doubt exactly, just an ache I couldn't name. But inside courtroom 4, the air was sharp with tension. The press sat in the back rows, pens poised like daggers. Ethan sat at the defense table, his wrists chained, his face unreadable. He was younger than I expected, maybe 30. Tall, dark hair falling messily across his forehead. A face that didn't belong to a murderer but to a poet or a dreamer. When he looked up at me for the first time, our eyes met. For a heartbeat, everything in me faltered. There was no anger, no defiance in his eyes, only disbelief. And a kind of tired sorrow that unsettled me more than any hostility could. The judge entered. The jury filed in. My throat tightened around the words I'd practiced for weeks. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," I began, "this is a case of betrayal, greed, and the darkness that festers when envy meets opportunity." My voice was calm, confident. I built the case piece by piece, the motive, the timeline, the forensic evidence. I painted Ethan Ward as a man driven by desperation, a struggling artist who killed his benefactor after being denied a lucrative contract. And all the while, he just watched me. Not with hatred, but with quiet curiosity. As though he was trying to understand how someone could stand there and destroy him with such poise. During a recess, I found myself in the courthouse cafe, staring blankly at my reflection in the window. My mentor, Jonathan Pierce, approached. "You're doing well," he said. Don't let his face shake you. Sympathy is the enemy of justice. "Justice," I repeated softly. "Yes, of course." But that night, when I returned home, I couldn't sleep. I replayed his expression in my mind, those eyes that seemed to beg without words. Something about the evidence gnawed at me. The timeline was too perfect. The witness statements, too rehearsed. Still, I pushed the thought away. Justice wasn't about feelings. It was about facts. The cross-examination began the next morning. Ethan's lawyer, an older man named Graves, was struggling. His questions stumbled. His arguments lacked conviction. I almost pitied him. Almost. When Ethan took the stand, the room fell silent. He swore on the Bible and looked at me again before speaking. His voice was low, steady. "I didn't kill him," he said simply. "I found him like that." He was already gone. Graves asked the routine questions, but I felt his eyes drifting to me, as if he wanted me to believe him, not the jury. When my turn came, I rose from my seat. "Mr. Ward," I said, stepping closer, "you claim you didn't kill Mr. Calloway, yet your fingerprints were on the knife. Your blood was found on the floor. How do you explain that?" He hesitated. I tried to help him. He was still breathing when I found him. I called for help, no one came. "You expect us to believe that?" I said sharply. His gaze didn't waver. "I expect you to see the truth, Ms. Hart." The way he said my name sent a chill down my spine. The courtroom faded for a moment into a blur of noise and light. Something inside me, something I had buried under years of logic and law, stirred. When the verdict came 2 weeks later, it was no surprise. Guilty. Ethan didn't flinch. He simply bowed his head as the judge pronounced the sentence, life imprisonment. After the trial, I walked through the corridors of the Old Bailey, my victory ringing hollow in my ears. Reporters swarmed me, praising my performance, my precision, my success. I smiled for the cameras, but my heart felt like a stone sinking into the Thames. Later, as I was gathering my files, a guard approached. "Ms. Hart," he said quietly, "the prisoner asked if he could give you something." He handed me a folded piece of paper, creased and smudged with fingerprints. It was a note. "You said justice was blind. I hope one day you'll open your eyes. E.W." I stared at the words for a long time. My hands trembled. I told myself it didn't matter, that I had done my job. That truth was decided by evidence, not emotion. But that night, I dreamed of him, Ethan, standing in the rain outside the courthouse, staring up at me through the glass. His eyes weren't accusing. They were forgiving. And somehow that made it worse. Months passed. I moved on to other cases, won more trials, earned another promotion. On the outside, my life was flawless. But something inside me had cracked. Every time I passed the prison bus on its route to Brixton, I wondered if he was on it. Every time I looked at a case file, I questioned what I didn't see. Then one morning, I received an envelope with no return address. Inside were several sheets of paper, handwritten in neat, careful script. The first line made my breath catch. "You don't know me anymore, but I think about that day often." It was from Ethan Ward. He wrote about the trial, about how he'd forgiven me, though he didn't understand why I'd never looked deeper. He said he'd been working in the prison library, helping others with appeals. He said he didn't hate me. He just wanted me to know. By the time I finished reading, my vision was blurred with tears. I told myself it was pity. It wasn't. It was guilt. And beneath that guilt, something softer, something terrifying, began to bloom. That night, I went back to the old case file. I read everything again, every statement, every piece of evidence. For the first time, I noticed things I'd missed before. A witness who'd changed his story, a missing security log, photographs that didn't match the timeline. And then the realization hit me like a verdict I couldn't appeal. I might have put an innocent man in prison. I stared at his letter again, hands shaking. "I hope one day you'll open your eyes." The rain began to fall against my window, steady and relentless. Outside, the city pulsed with indifferent life. And somewhere out there, behind cold stone walls, was a man paying for a crime he didn't commit, because of me. I pressed the letter to my chest, my heart pounding with something that felt dangerously close to both regret and longing. That night, I made a decision I could never take back. I was going to find out the truth. Guilt of the Hart Episode 2, The Letters. It started with one letter, then another, and another, each one written in that same steady handwriting, neat, deliberate, almost tender in its restraint. Ethan Ward had become a voice in my life, one that whispered from the past but felt closer with every word I read. The first few were simple. He wrote about the routines in prison, the endless clanging of metal, the silence between the bars, the moments when time stood still. He mentioned the books he read, the men he helped write appeals, the way the sky looked through the narrow slit of his cell window. But then his tone changed. "You once said truth is built on facts. But facts can lie if they're built on fear." That line haunted me. I had spent my life believing that truth was something you could prove, something that could be typed, stamped, and filed neatly in an archive. But Ethan's words lingered like a confession, not of guilt, but of something deeper. For the first time in my career, I couldn't look at a conviction without wondering what I'd missed. It was a Thursday evening when I finally replied. I told myself it was just professional curiosity, a moral duty to hear him out. But when I sat at my desk and began to write, my hands trembled. "Mr. Ward, I received your letters. I've reread the case file and found certain inconsistencies I cannot ignore. I can't promise anything, but I would like to ask you a few questions." Amelia Hart, I didn't expect him to answer. But 3 days later, another envelope arrived. "You don't need to call me Mr. Ward. It's Ethan, and I've been waiting for you to ask questions since the day they closed those doors behind me." He described the night of the murder again, in more detail this time. How he'd arrived at the gallery after receiving a strange message from his employer, Richard Calloway. How the lights had been off. How he'd found Calloway already bleeding, whispering something he couldn't make out. How he'd called for help. But by the time anyone came, it was too late. I remembered the crime scene photos vividly. But now, reading his version, small things didn't align. The time the neighbors heard the commotion, the direction of the blood splatter, even the temperature of the body when it was found. I should have seen it. I should have questioned it. I felt sick. Then over the next few weeks, our letters became more frequent. At first, I asked questions, legal ones. Then they became personal. He told me about the life he'd had before prison, growing up in Brixton, studying art, falling in love once but being left because of his dreams. I told him about the law school library where I practically lived, how I chose prosecution because I thought justice needed defenders. He said he admired that. He never once asked for pity. "You remind me of the rain," he wrote once. "You fall hard, you hit cold ground, and yet somehow you make everything alive again." I didn't know how to reply to that. So I didn't, But I read the sentence over and over until I could almost hear his voice saying it. The more I dug into the case, the darker things became. Richard Calloway had enemies, not just personal ones, but financial. His gallery had been laundering money for private buyers. There were missing records, hidden transfers, even a deleted camera file from the night of the murder. And then I found something that made my blood run cold. The security logs, the ones that placed Ethan at the scene first, had been edited. The original timestamps didn't match the prosecution's version. I checked the digital trail myself. Someone inside the police department had altered the data. The realization hit me with the force of a verdict. Ethan had been framed. But by who? And why? I knew reopening a closed case could end my career. But doing nothing meant living with the knowledge that an innocent man was still behind bars because of me. I visited him. It took every ounce of courage I had to walk through those gates, past the guards, the clanging doors, the smell of metal and despair. He looked different in person. Thinner, older, but his eyes, those same deep, steady eyes, hadn't changed. When he saw me, he froze. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then he smiled faintly. I wondered when you'd stop hiding behind paper. I'm not hiding, I said, though my voice betrayed me. Then what are you doing here? I swallowed. I'm trying to make things right. His gaze softened. And what if right doesn't exist anymore? I'll still try, I whispered. He looked down, shaking his head with a faint, sad smile. You don't owe me redemption, Amelia. Maybe I don't, I said, but I owe you the truth. The guard announced that time was up, but as I stood to leave, he reached across the table. Not to touch me, but to stop me. Be careful, he said quietly. People who wanted me silenced won't like you digging. I wanted to ask what he meant, but the guard was already leading me away. I turned once. He was still watching, a strange mix of warning and something else in his eyes. After that, I couldn't sleep. I went over the files again, every note, every missing detail. The pattern was clear now. Someone inside the system had buried evidence. One night, I received a call from an unknown number. A man's voice said, "You don't know what you're doing, Ms. Hart. Let the past stay buried." Then he hung up. The next morning, my car tires were slashed. A quiet threat. But fear didn't stop me. Guilt couldn't either. If anything, the danger only made me more certain I had to see this through. I began collecting witness statements again, visiting the old gallery, talking to Calloway's former employees. One of them, a young woman named Lila, finally broke. She admitted that on the night of the murder, she saw someone else leaving the gallery. A man in a dark coat carrying a briefcase with Calloway's initials. She didn't come forward because she was threatened. By whom? She didn't know, but she remembered one detail. The man had a police badge. And that night, I wrote to Ethan again. Ethan, you were right. The evidence was altered. Someone in the police tampered with the logs. I don't know who yet, but I'm going to find out. I don't know what happens next, but I promise you, this isn't over. Amelia, his reply came a week later. I don't care what happens to me anymore, Amelia. But don't let them destroy you too. You still have your freedom. Keep it. But I couldn't. Not anymore. Because freedom meant nothing if it was built on someone else's cage. 2 months later, I filed a motion to reopen the case. His voice was low, furious. Have you lost your mind? You're trying to undo your own prosecution? You'll ruin your reputation. Maybe it deserves to be ruined, I said quietly. He stared at me for a long moment. You're not doing this for justice, Amelia. You're doing it for him. I didn't deny it. Because maybe he was right. Somewhere between the letters and the guilt, something had changed inside me. Ethan wasn't just a man I wronged. He had become the truth I'd been too blind to see. Though the court granted a review hearing, I wasn't his prosecutor anymore. I was his lawyer. When Ethan saw me walk into the room, file in hand, defense badge pinned to my blazer, his eyes widened. You can't be serious, he whispered as I sat beside him. I am, I said. This time I'm on your side. He laughed softly, disbelieving. You really are mad. Maybe, I said. But madness is all justice ever was. The guard signaled the judge's arrival, and we both stood. For the first time, I wasn't standing against him. We were standing together. And as the trial reopened, I realized that justice wasn't blind at all. It just needed someone willing to see. Episode 3, The Truth. The first time I stood beside Ethan Ward in court, I felt invincible. The second time, I felt terrified. Because this time the stakes weren't just justice. They were us. When the hearing began, whispers rippled through the courtroom. The same lawyer who once sent him to prison now stood at his defense. Every journalist in London wanted the story. The irony wasn't lost on me, but I didn't care. Let them talk. Ethan sat beside me, hands folded, a faint smirk touching his lips. "Quite the scandal, isn't it?" he whispered. "Let them call it what they want," I murmured, eyes on the bench. "We call it redemption." "Redemption for who?" he asked quietly. I didn't answer. I wasn't sure I could. And our first day back in court was chaos. The prosecution fought to block the retrial, calling it a publicity stunt. But I'd gathered enough to shake the foundations of the original case, the tampered evidence, the deleted security files, and new testimony from Lila, the frightened gallery assistant. When I cross-examined the lead detective, Inspector Harlan Graves, his calm demeanor cracked for just a second. "You testified that all digital evidence was intact at the time of arrest," I said. "Yet the metadata shows alterations made after your department logged the files." "That's impossible," he said, his jaw tightening. "Impossible," I repeated, sliding the printed logs across the table. "Or inconvenient?" He refused to meet my eyes. But in the silence that followed, the truth began to breathe. After court, Ethan and I met in a small interview room. No guards this time. Just us, a table, and 2 cups of terrible vending machine coffee. "You were brilliant," he said. "I'm not done yet," I replied. "We still don't know who edited those files. Someone wanted you to take the fall." He leaned forward, his voice low. "It was Harlan, wasn't it?" I hesitated. "Maybe. But someone higher up might have ordered it." Ethan's jaw clenched. Calloway had business with men who bought stolen art. Police officers, politicians, even foreign clients. Maybe he tried to back out. Maybe someone decided to silence him and frame you as the perfect scapegoat, I finished softly. He looked at me for a long moment. "You're risking everything, Amelia. You know that, right? I already lost everything that mattered when I put you away." He studied me, really studied me, until I couldn't hold his gaze. Then he said, "You didn't lose me. You just didn't know I was worth keeping." The words hit deeper than they should have. I turned away before he could see the tears threatening to fall. Over the following weeks, we worked in secret. I visited the archives, tracked down old leads, even confronted a retired officer who had been part of the original investigation. He refused to speak until I mentioned Ethan's name. Then his face went pale. "You don't know what you're doing, Miss Hart," he said. "You think this was about a murder?" It wasn't. Calloway was set to expose a corruption ring, money laundering through his gallery. Ward was the decoy, easy target, wrong connections. "Who ordered it?" I pressed. He hesitated. "Someone with power. Someone still in office. They'll come for you next." That night, my flat was broken into. My files gone. My computer stolen. A message carved into my desk with a knife. "Stop digging." I didn't call the police. I already knew where that led. Ethan was furious when I told him. "You can't keep putting yourself in danger for me," he said, pacing the small room during our next meeting. "I'm not doing it for you," I snapped. "I'm doing it because it's right." He stopped. "You keep saying that, but you don't realize, you are the reason I'm still sane in there. Every time I thought about giving up, I'd remember your letters." My throat tightened. "You shouldn't rely on me." "Too late." His voice was soft, and when our eyes met, I felt it. The quiet gravity that had been pulling us closer with every truth uncovered. The air between us shifted. Dangerous. Fragile. Real. I broke eye contact first. "We should focus on the case." But my pulse betrayed me. A week later, the judge granted a full retrial. And just like that, everything changed. Jonathan Pierce publicly denounced me, saying I'd abandoned the crown for a lost cause. My firm suspended me pending review. Colleagues stopped returning calls. But the damage was already done. I'd crossed the line from lawyer to believer. The night before the retrial began, I sat in my flat surrounded by case files and exhaustion. My reflection in the window looked like a stranger. Hair undone, eyes hollow, but alive in a way I hadn't been in years. A knock at the door startled me. When I opened it, Ethan was standing there. He wasn't supposed to be free. Not yet. But the guard who escorted him, the same one who had handed me his first note, gave me a small nod and walked away. "Emergency transfer," Ethan said quietly. "They're keeping me at a halfway facility until the hearing. I needed to see you." Before I could respond, he stepped inside. The air felt electric. "I couldn't let you fight alone anymore," he said. "They'll destroy you for what you're doing." "I don't care." He took a step closer. "I do." The silence between us stretched, heavy, fragile, inevitable. "You shouldn't be here," I whispered. "Then tell me to leave." I couldn't. Instead, I said his name. Just once. "Ethan." And then he kissed me. It wasn't desperate, it was quiet, aching, filled with all the things we'd never said. Years of guilt and forgiveness wrapped into one breath. When he pulled back, his forehead rested against mine. "This changes nothing," he said softly. "It changes everything," I whispered. The next morning, we walked into court side by side. Every flash of a camera felt like lightning. Every whisper, a storm brewing. But we had evidence now. The retired officer's statement, the altered logs, the witness Lila, and a list of bank transfers that connected Inspector Graves to Callaway's offshore accounts. As I laid the documents before the court, I could feel Graves's gaze burning into me. His mask was cracking. "The prosecution's evidence was manufactured," I said firmly. "My client, Ethan Ward, was framed to protect a network of corruption within the Metropolitan Police." The judge leaned forward. "Are you implying collusion at the highest levels of law enforcement?" "Yes, Your Honor," I said. "And I have proof." Ethan turned to look at me, eyes full of something that looked like pride and heartbreak combined. Graves stood abruptly. "This is outrageous." "Outrageous?" I said coldly. "No, Inspector. What's outrageous is sending an innocent man to rot in prison for your greed." The court erupted. Reporters shouted. The judge pounded the gavel. But over the chaos, I saw Graves's expression, not fear, but fury. That night, as we left the courthouse under guard, a black car screeched around the corner. The window rolled down and a flash of metal glinted in the streetlight. "Amelia!" Ethan shouted, pulling me down just as the shot rang out. The bullet shattered the glass behind us. People screamed. Sirens wailed. The car sped off into the London fog. We lay there on the wet pavement, hearts racing. "You okay?" he gasped. "I think so," I breathed. He brushed a lock of hair from my face, his hand trembling. "They're still trying to silence us. Then they'll have to try harder," I whispered. The next few days were chaos. The attack made headlines. Public pressure mounted. The investigation widened, uncovering ties between Graves and several high-ranking officials. And finally, the Crown dropped all charges against Ethan Ward. He was a free man. But freedom didn't feel like victory. Not yet. The day the verdict was announced, we stood on the courthouse steps. The rain was falling again, soft and relentless. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted, but it all felt far away. Ethan looked at me. "You did it," he said. "We did it," I corrected. He smiled faintly. "You could have walked away." "I couldn't," I whispered. "You were my mistake to make right." He stepped closer. "And what if I don't want to be a mistake anymore?" My heart twisted. "Then what are we, Ethan?" He looked out into the rain. Two people who found the truth too late. And before I could answer, he turned and walked away into the mist. I wanted to call after him, to ask him to stay, but the words caught in my throat, because I knew deep down he was right. Some truths free us, others haunt us forever. Episode 4, The Verdict, a year passed. London didn't change much, but I did. The city still reigned, still hid its secrets beneath umbrellas and sighs, but somewhere in its rhythm, I had learned to breathe again. My name was cleared after the retrial. The truth about the police corruption made headlines for months, and Inspector Graves was sentenced for obstruction of justice. I was offered my position back, even promotions, interviews, a book deal. I turned them all down. Instead, I opened a small firm in South Bank, defense only. I no longer prosecuted. I couldn't. The idea of standing on the other side again made my stomach twist. Some nights, when I walked home across Waterloo Bridge, I still looked at the river and thought of him. Ethan Ward. After the trial, he vanished. No interviews, no statements, no goodbyes. Just gone. But his absence followed me everywhere. The way his voice softened when he said my name. The look in his eyes when he said, "You found the truth too late. Some wounds never heal. They just learn to coexist with the heartbeats that caused them."